You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Thursday. We're finally back in doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day, although we have skipped a few. We are going to make some up this week. That is happening. So, I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group, and I apologize for missing the couple days. That was not the intention. Happened in part due to getting ghosted by our supposed guest, but that, you know, when God closes a door, he opens a window. We've got a special guest on this episode, and that is Gary Stokan, the CEO of the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, joining us to discuss what he's seen from Michigan, how the bowl game works, how they which playoff game they get, more information about the Peach Bowl, which you'll hear me say multiple times that's my favorite bowl game that I got to cover, even though Michigan got blown out in that game that week. Because remember, for those of us in the media, we're there all week. It isn't just show up for the game. And they run the most top-notch operation of any like, I've been to the Orange Bowl twice. I've been to the Outback Bowl. I've been to the Citrus Bowl. Not to impugn those bowl games. Peach Bowl, hands down, the best. I'm pretty sure every single media member that was there with me at that time agrees. It was that good. But let's before we get to Gary, let's talk a little bit about one thing that Jim Harbaugh said that really piqued my interest this week. Because like I said earlier, I'm not really on Illinois. We'll certainly do like a preview episode of Illinois on Friday. I should also mention this is one of two on Thursday because we will have the mailbag. But one of the things is he went on to Stoney and Jansen and said, we have been preparing for Ohio State for months. The game planning has been essentially equally mixed. Now, let me pull this up because I don't want to put words in his mouth. Lord knows I have been accused of those types of things before, where it's like I make an inference on something and run with it, and only to be told that it's not exactly what was said. So let's read it verbatim. Said, we've really just given a sufficient amount of time to Ohio State every week, and most on the team we're playing. So there's nothing that's new this week. It's been a steady following, preparing for Ohio State for months now. Call it for what it is. It's been a mix. We've been preparing for Ohio State and also the team we're playing. So obviously still focused on the issue at hand, but it clearly, I mean, this is a giant departure from what things used to be. I know that they had the Beat Ohio drill and things like that last year. I'm not 100% certain that this was what they were doing last year. So this year, I mean, they have Ohio State, you know, they have their full attention. I don't know if I phrased that right, but they are clearly working on it. And that gives me a lot of hope when it comes to one of the things that I feel like I end up saying on a weekly, not a weekly, but a yearly basis. When it comes to this game, I always have these expectations that we're going to see all kinds of things that we haven't seen before. And when I say that, I don't mean like it's going to be completely radically different, right? Like it's not going to be like, oh, wow, Michigan's actually got some kind of triple option mixed with an air raid, right? That's not clearly they're not going to change the entire complexion of the team. But certainly when you are looking at certain elements of the Wolverines and are sitting there looking and thinking like, are they holding some things back? Because it certainly has felt like it. And I know Jim Harbaugh has come out here and said multiple times, Sherrone Moore said the same thing on Wednesday, you know, when it comes to the run game versus the pass game, if another team can't stop it, why would we stop it? And I think that's absolutely valid. Of course, we want to see more things in the pass game, but it's been since week 6. We are in week 12. It has been 6 weeks since the passing game went out there and flourished as it did against Indiana. So certainly people have questions about whether or not Michigan can pass. But there are certain elements of the offense that I feel like Michigan hasn't really used that much in recent weeks. Now, I don't believe I've watched either of the last two games on replay, but when it comes to the pass game, there are elements that we haven't seen that they've used early on in the season. Things we've seen the tight end slant, the crossing routes from the tight ends, but we haven't really seen it from the receivers as we had earlier in the year. For instance, it seems like pretty much most of the plays they're running are go routes with a couple exceptions as far as when they're passing. So I think that there is a lot that maybe is going to come out on November 26th in Columbus. And whether it works or not, we'll find out. I think that this is even though it's a very different style of game this weekend against Illinois, I think we will learn a lot about what this Michigan team is, more so than we have in any other game against Illinois, because I think that this Illinois team is good enough to hang with Michigan for a little while, despite their losses in the last 2 weeks. I think that they have both the talent and the capability and probably a belief in themselves. So if Michigan goes out and just destroys them, then I think we have a pretty good idea, just kind of similar to that Maryland game last year, where Michigan is at. But if it is a close game, I don't think that it necessarily means that Michigan's dead in the water going to Columbus. I just think that if they go out there and win convincingly, you can probably feel pretty good that this is a team that's just going to impose its will, no matter what style of play there is. But we will see. All right, so we are going to continue on. But before we do, this episode of Locked On Wolverines is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Now, when you need to get someone for the right role, you need to go into your recruiting bag and you need to bring in the right recruit. And you can do that by using LinkedIn Jobs. It's like using the 24/7 sports composite to go through and find the right job. And it's so easy to create a free job post on LinkedIn Jobs. You add your job, and then you can add the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. If you want to finish the team out strong, just like you want Michigan to finish the year out strong, then you need the right team member to help you do that. It's why small businesses rank LinkedIn Jobs the number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to, and they do it faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. We're going to be right back with Gary Stokan, the CEO of the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. And we are back as promised, and we have a huge special guest. Someone I definitely admire, someone who I was around for a minute, just a minute, essentially, in 2018, rather. And that is I can't talk. Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl CEO, Gary Stokan. Gary, I can't talk. I'm just going to apparently let you lead this interview because I'm calling you the wrong names. I can't even say the name of the sponsor of the Peach Bowl.
I've been called worse, Isaiah. Don't worry about it.
It's and this I have to lead off by telling you it's my favorite bowl game that I've been to. I've been to I think 5 now, and it was easily my favorite. And I think that stands for everyone that was in the media that was covering that 2018 version of the Peach Bowl, where Michigan played Florida. I think every single media member that I know that was down there, we all agree it was the best. So that's the first question I want to ask you is what makes it so that you as a group make it so hospitable for those of us who are there, because it's another level. I've been at the Orange Bowl twice, not to disparage any other bowls, but I've been to the Orange Bowl twice. I've been to the Citrus Bowl. I've been to the Outback Bowl when it was called that. And bar none, Peach Bowl was the greatest. Why?
I appreciate that. I wish I could have that quote and pass along to my staff who they deserve all the credit in the world. Matt Garvey, who you probably worked with, our VP of communication, really does a great job. We just believe in Southern hospitality. We really enjoy having teams come in and being able to, the media, the fans, the administration, the teams, the players, the coaches, really host them in a meaningful way. And, a couple points to your first question and your first point. In 25 years, my favorite moment in those 25 years, and people have asked me this a lot, was the Michigan-Florida game when my vice president of sales, Benji Hollis, his daughter, AC, Anna Charles, contracted leukemia in April, went through 6 months of radiation, chemo, and was preparing for a bone marrow transplant. Unfortunately, at 6 years old, her little heart gave out and she died. And that game, she died in September, late September 18th, I think it was. That game, I had my staff put on the Halo board Sweet Caroline's music, but instead of Caroline, I inserted Anna Charles, because I told Benji and his wife Leanna that I wanted to celebrate her life. And so I put Benji and Leanna and Everly in the end zone on the field by themselves during a quarter break. And we played Sweet Caroline and sang Sweet Anna Charles. And everybody in the crowd got up, stood, swaying back and forth, singing Sweet Anna Charles. And we PA'd the story. And people were crying in the stands, and it was the most meaningful moment I've had in the 25 years. So that game, as well as yours said earlier, that has a special memory for me. But the other thing I was going to say is we really enjoy hosting people who are coming in from out of town, like Michigan people. We've had ACC and SEC for so many years that it's nice to see, like Michigan State last year, Pitt. We've had Washington, we've had TCU since we've joined the CFP in the New Year's Six. And this year we'll have, 1 versus 4 and 2 versus 3. So we do really enjoy people coming into our town and playing host to them.
Well, to that point, because obviously Michigan at this juncture is potentially in the running for being in the game again, considering it's the playoff. And like you just actually answered one of my questions, that you get 1 versus 4. I wanted to know, how does that how did that normally work out? Because I know last year going into the game, going into the bowl selections, no one was 100% sure who was going to go where, even when it came to the rankings. How does that work behind the scenes as far as figuring out which of the 2 New Year's Six level bowls that have the playoffs, how do they get to the point where they know, okay, this is the game that we're going to have?
Yeah, and if I misspoke and said that we were going to have number 1, I apologize, because that's not the case. We don't know. We'll be on December 4th at 12:15 Eastern, waiting just like you will and all the fans in America to find out what 2 teams we're going to be hosting, as the CFP selection committee lets it known who's 1 and 4 and 2 and 3. Us and the Fiesta Bowl host the semifinals this year of the CFP, and the only consideration that a team gets in the Final Four is the CFP selection committee will give a geographical advantage to the number 1 team in the country. So in other words, let's say the season ended this today, you'd have Georgia number 1. Obviously Georgia would play in Atlanta in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. If USC was number 1, USC would play in the Fiesta Bowl. So they will take the team that is closest to either Atlanta or Phoenix and place them in the respective bowl game. And then so 1 would play 4, 2 would play 3. We've had 2 other semifinals in 16 and 19 that we'll host here, and we'll host in 25 a semi. And in 16 and 19, Alabama was number 1. we got Alabama versus Washington. And then in 19, LSU was number one. We had LSU versus Oklahoma.
Well, certainly, you can only imagine how excited the Georgia fans would be if they had just a short trip from. I mean, I used to spend my summers in Atlanta. I know how many Bulldogs fans there are in that, and obviously all around there, just to be able to essentially have a home game right after the SEC championship would be big for them, of course.
Yeah, I think this would be the first time ever that one team would have played in the same stadium 3 games in 1 year. I might be wrong. Probably need to look that up. But, we had Georgia start against Oregon when they were number 1 and Oregon was number 12 this year in our Chick-fil-A kickoff game in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And then they'll play in the SEC championship on December 3rd in Mercedes-Benz. And then if they were to finish number 1, they would finish the season in the semifinal in Mercedes-Benz in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. So kind of interesting if it works out that way.
Well, honestly, I mean, considering the job you guys do and also with that kickoff game as well and all of that, I mean, I'm sure that's what they are clamoring for, on top of the fact that it would be the number 1 team gets that geographical advantage. I do want to continue this conversation. Let's take a quick second, and then we will continue on with Gary Stokan from the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. For some reason, able to say it right there, even though my tongue is completely tied. BetOnline.net is your number 1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. We've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we are back with Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl CEO Gary Stokan. And Gary, I'm just curious. I mean, you're obviously, like you said, you're going to be waiting on December 4th to find out the news just as much as anyone about who you're going to get. But considering that I'm sure you're sitting there watching as many games as possible. I've seen not just the Peach Bowl social media, but any other bowl game that I follow a lot now, having gone to several. They're always keeping an eye on the field, trying to see what the teams that have played in those bowl games have done, as well as those who might be in their bowl games. So first off, before we get to the field, when you see Michigan, what do you think? Where's your mind at when you've taken a look at the Wolverines and what they have done so far this year?
Well, I think Michigan may have the best offensive line in college football. I did see Michigan against Penn State this year. We represent and manage the Bobby Dodd Coach of the Year, and we had an anniversary visit with Coach Carr, Lloyd Carr, during that Penn State game where the '97 national championship team was honored, and we represented the Dodd Trophy to Coach Carr. So I did see him against Penn State, was very impressed, obviously, with their offensive line. Edwards and Corum are fantastic running backs. Both give you a little bit of different take. Edwards probably more speed, Corum more guts, and will run inside the tackles, and really tough runner, who probably should be considered for the Heisman if he's not. I think McCarthy has done a great job of not only throwing the ball, but he gets outside the pocket and can make plays with his feet, but also throwing when he gets outside the pocket, which is really dangerous to a defense. Their kicking game is solid. They play very good defense. Really surprised their defense is this good, losing, the 2 kids to the NFL draft in the first round. So they play very complimentary football, which was what you would expect from a great coach team like Coach Harbaugh is, great coach. And so, yeah, people say, well, geez, we need a playoff in college football. I contend that 2 weeks ago, the playoffs started with number 1 against number 3, Tennessee, Georgia, number 6 Alabama against number 10 LSU. That weekend, number 1, number 4, number 6 all lost. Clemson, Alabama, and Tennessee all lost. So we're going to have another playoff game with Michigan and Ohio State next weekend. So it's a great time for college football. We're glad to be a part of it. A lot of people have kind of nicknamed Atlanta as the capital of college football now. And so we're happy to have the semifinal. And, you know, in 2024, if the playoff does get expanded to 12, we would host that year Clemson, Georgia in our Chick-fil-A kickoff game, which would be 2 top 5 teams. We'll host 2 top 10 teams in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl in a quarterfinal game. And then we would host the national championship in January. And then after the 25 season, we'll host the college football playoff semifinal again. So some great top 10 teams coming to Atlanta numerous times in 24 and 25 in college football, in the capital of college football, Atlanta, Georgia.
And it certainly feels like it's the capital of college football in a lot of ways. I mean, certainly there are the various, meccas of college football, whether it be here in Ann Arbor, going to South Bend and seeing Notre Dame, the various college campuses. But I think one of the greatest parts of one of the things that really sold me the week that I was down there, while I had a blast the day before at the go-kart and arcade and watching the teams having fun there, I think getting to go to the College Football Museum Hall of Fame there in downtown Atlanta the next day, between actually getting to see all the artifacts and then having the teams, that the wonderful competition you guys put on. I still have the video of Michigan winning that trivia competition, and it was I watch it every now and again because that was just a fun moment. So well,
it's interesting. We use a theme for our bowl game of live, laugh, and learn. We want the kids to live great, get great gifts, stay in great hotels, travel first class, play in a great facility, eat great food like Chick-fil-A. And then we want them to laugh. So we have a Battle for Bowl Week, which you mentioned, and the 40-pound WWE belt is awarded every night in a competition. And then they have to give it back. So the next day there's a new winner. And then we have an overall winner. So it keeps the kids interested. They're going through practice and videos and meetings. This gives them a little fun so they can laugh. And all kids want to do is compete against each other and laugh at each other and rip each other. And so that's a lot of fun. And then learn, we want the kids to be able to give back during the holidays. So we take them and the coach to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta for kids that, didn't get out of the hospital for Christmas, and they may never get out of that hospital. So, for the coach and the players to get back to those kids and their families that at that time is really special. And then we do something you're not supposed to do at a bowl game. We take both teams and put them together, and they sit together in the pews at Ebenezer Baptist Church, which is where Dr. King actually was the pastor and spoke from the pulpit. And his mother actually got shot and died at the organ there. And we've had Congressman Lewis and C.T. Vivian and Ambassador Young all speak to the players about the civil rights movement, because it's basically a living history lesson, because they weren't even born during the civil rights. Their parents might not even been born during the civil rights movement. So we lost Congressman Lewis and C.T. Vivian this year, but Ambassador Andy Young is going to speak along with Bill Curry, who has coached at Kentucky and Alabama and Georgia Tech and Georgia State, played for Don Shula and Vince Lombardi, was on those great Green Bay teams and Baltimore teams in the Super Bowl. And he has a book called 10 Men in the Huddle Out, which is really a good read if you like college football. But, it talks about, in a huddle, you can have a black kid from Compton, LA, and a white kid from the hills of North Carolina, and a Christian and a Catholic and a Muslim and a Jew, all in the huddle at the same time. And none of that matters, because you're all got the same colors on and you all need each other to be successful. And it really talks about teamwork. And, in this day and time of togetherness and unitedness, where we're so divided as a country, this is a great learning opportunity, not only from civil rights perspective with Ambassador Young, but also from Coach Curry, who both of them worked together when Coach was, the head coach at Georgia Tech. Ambassador Young used to come and help them recruit, every Saturday when they had the recruits in. So they'll speak to the teams on Thursday night. So, that's a great opportunity for the kids to learn. So that's the theme we use, live, laugh, and learn. And it makes a big difference for the experience, because everything we do at our bowl game is a reward for the players, because they're the ones that have spent the time in January and the winter and spring and then summer practice and, playing the whole season. So it's kind of our philosophies.
I definitely could feel that being there. And I will say I was definitely bummed out that I understood how limited space was in that church, but not being able to go to that. But because I wasn't, I just went and walked by it while we were there. I think it was the day of or day after. Whenever I had free time, I purposely went over there and walked by it just for that reason, just to kind of have that feeling. Gary, we are actually out of time, but I very much appreciate you joining us. Hopefully I will see you in person in December at some point. That is what I am hoping.
And as we get closer, if you need us again, we're happy to do another interview with you. And I really appreciate what you said about our bowl game, and I'll pass it along to my staff, and what you said about the Hall of Fame, which is kind of special to me, because it was kind of my idea to bring the Hall of Fame to Atlanta. So, and being involved in putting the exhibit design together and the architecture and the everything, it's a labor of love, that's for sure.
Well, it's like I said, I don't think there is a single media member that covered that game and that has covered subsequent games or before or after who feels any differently than I do. We all absolutely had a blast down there and absolutely loved it. And I still see people wearing their Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl pullovers all the time. I still have mine. Actually, I'm amazed that I didn't wear it today. I think I just didn't think of it. But thank you very much.
You can wear it when you come back down.
Yeah. And
then you'll get another one too.
That's what I'm hoping. I need to get a collection, maybe a different color.
There you go. Well, have a happy Thanksgiving to you and all your listeners. And I appreciate you having us.
All right. Well, thank you. And for those listeners out there, this was the Locked On Wolverines podcast. Thanks for joining. We will talk to you soon. Peace.